Welcome everyone to our talk for tonight, titled From the First Dean to the First Lady Medical Student, Notable Doctors Before the War by Dr. Wong Tai-Wai. Dr. Wong graduated from HKU Faculty of Medicine in 1980 and has contributed significantly to the field of emergency medicine, serving as a founder of the Hong Kong College of Emergency Medicine and as its president in 2002. And also the president of the Hong Kong Society for Emergency Medicine and Surgery in 2004. Currently, Dr. Wong is working as a part-time consultant in the Accident and Emergency Department of PYNEH and honorary associate professor teaching emergency medicine in HKU Medicine. Dr. Wong is also a writer and has published books and articles on the work of an emergency physician and topics in relation to the history of medicine in Hong Kong. He has recently co-authored 2 books with Professor Maura Chan, The Yu Family, A Century of Medical Excellence, and Notable Doctors in the Medical History of Hong Kong, 1842 to 2015, Individuals Who Shaped the Medical Services. So without further ado, let's pass the time to Dr. Wong. Dr. Wong, please.
Thank you for inviting me to talk about this topic, which is, of course, about medical history. So this is the topic of the talk. Well, as already mentioned, the Hong Kong Medical Museum published this book, Notable Doctors and the Medical History of Hong Kong, earlier this year. It was co-authored by me and Professor Maura Chan. So how did they come about? From 2018 to 2021, Professor Maura Chan published these 3 books in the medical history of Hong Kong, the last one being the one on the outpatient department. And during the process, she amassed a lot of material on various important persons. So in 2020, she suggests to propose that why don't we write a book on the medical history from the perspective of doctors who sort of shaped the development. So that's how this project came about in 2020. So in the book, we divide the doctors into 4 categories. Now for this evening, because we are talking to the alumni, so I'm going to choose only notable doctors related to the medical faculty. That's why we choose a topic from the first dean to the first female medical students. Now, of course, everyone in this room will know that the Hong Kong College of Medicine for Chinese, which was established in 1887, was the so-called origin of our medical faculty. And I'm sure everybody in this room know that the first dean of the college was Sir Patrick Manson, okay? I'm not talking about Sir Manson tonight, because he's so well known. Now, we also have this building. Of course, everyone knows about this building in Hong Kong. In my time, it was the library. So we spent a lot of time in this building, as well as the student hostel. This came in the early 70s in the area of Professor McPherson, about 50 years after the death of Sir Patrick Manson. But earlier, actually quite early, there was already a suggestion to name a hall, Mansion Hall, and the student hostel in the old government civil hospital. This is a letter to the editor, to the caduceus in 1923, less than 1 year after the death of Patrick Manson. From Manchuria, why should a doctor, Francis Clark from Manchuria, wrote to the caduceus about this? Of course, he was related to the faculty. And this is Francis Clark, Dr. Francis Clark. This picture was taken in the 20s, okay? Probably at his retirement. Francis Clark is the topic we're talking today. He is the first dean of the medical faculty, okay? So because he's not so well known, so I choose this topic for sharing. Patrick Manson, I think you all know about him so much. Okay, the other person I'm going to pick tonight is the first female medical students. Now this is taken in a surgical clerkship. As you can see, sitting in the middle is Professor Digby. And on the far right, his far right is Lai Bo-chun, which is the first female student. And on the other side is Eva Ho Dong, also the first medical students. They were classmates, okay? So I'm going to tell the stories of these 3 persons. Of course, in the book, we cover more persons related to Hong Kong as well, but in the 30 minutes, I cannot cover too many. So this is Dr. Francis Clark. He's notable for two things. Number one, he's the first medical officer of health in Hong Kong. And also, of course, he's the first dean of this medical faculty. He arrived in Hong Kong in 1895. Okay, when he arrived, there was only a few doctors in the medical department. You can see from the list. The colonial surgeon, the head, is Dr. Ayres. And then the superintendent of the government civil hospital, equivalent to Queen Mary now, Dr. Atkinson, and his assistant, Dr. Lawson. And there's a part-time doctor called Dr. Jordan as a port health officer. So that's the sort of full manpower at that time. The question was, why do we need to create a new post, the medical office of health? Now, the reason for creating the post is, of course, because of this. In 1894, we have this devastating epidemic of plague, starting from Hong Kong and then become a pandemic. Now, in Hong Kong, on the record, about 2,500 people died. This is only on the record. Of course, more people died. And the population at that time was around 220,000. So in terms of the proportion of people affected, is even more severe than the COVID that we faced a few years back. So this is the #1 public health event in our history. Now, this picture shows the glasswork hospital, the glasswork factory, which was used as a temporary infectious disease hospital in Kennedy Town. I'll show you this picture because this is what we had, in the days. This is so-called a hospital. We don't even have a bed for these type of patients, and they all die. Not all, most of them will die actually. Mortality rate is approaching 100% for the Chinese, local Chinese. The female ward is actually a little bit better. I don't know why, but this is the male ward. Okay. And the epicenter for the epidemic was Taiping Shan area, which will be today the Blake Garden, and also near our medical museum. It was thought at the time that the poor hygiene, crowded housing, poor ventilation, etc., is the cause of the epidemic. Okay, we had not discovered the bacteria yet at that time. So the prevailing thought at the time is environmental. So the poor hygiene of these Chinese. So this is basically the Chinatown of Victoria City, because all the poor Chinese will be living here, very crowded, back to back. Okay. Now I circle this building here, the white building, which is the Netherso Clinic. It was a chapel of the London Missionary Society. And in 1881, it became a clinic called the Netherso Clinic. And this is the origin of the Alice Memorial Hospital, which was also the teaching hospital for the Hong Kong College of Medicine for Chinese. So for us people from Hong Kong, this is our humble beginning in this white chapel. Okay, we had our beginning in 1881. Okay, now because of this devastating epidemic, which also caused a lot of economic damage to the economy, and therefore the government said, okay, we have to do something and put up some resources to employ a medical office of health. That's why we have this. Of course, there are other changes as well, but this is the reason why Francis Clark was invited or employed. Okay, so he arrived in 1895. Okay, so this is his qualification. He came from UK, obviously. He got a DPH from Cambridge. He also was a lawyer. He's legally qualified. He's a barrister of the Middle Temple or something like that. Okay, so he had the experience as medical officer of health in England already. So he's the right person to come to Hong Kong at the age of about 30, I think. Now, note that he was not placed in the medical department. He was placed under the sanitary department. And the sanitary department obviously was concerned about the hygiene and the house sanitation, that kind of thing. And the sanitary department was under the, it was overseen by the sanitary board. Now, sanitary board may not be familiar to some of you here. In 1935, it became the Urban Council. Okay, Urban Council, I think everybody still remember, okay, because it was only abolished in after 1997. So that was the forerunner, okay, the sanitary board. It was the policy sort of arm of the sanitary department overseeing the activities. So he was placed under the sanitary department, and obviously because he's a medical officer of health, he was also appointed a member of the sanitary board. Now, the board was established in 1883, quite early. And in 1888, there were unofficial members and elected members as well. So this is the earliest election in the history of the colony, 1888. We have elected member to this sanitary board, which is responsible for the sanitation. So what were the roles of Francis Clark as medical officer of health? If you look at the annual report, he had annual report on his own, okay, called the report of the MOH. And in the MOH, these are the items, listed. So obviously for us, the most important thing is the control of the infectious disease. So they trace the source of reported infectious disease. And there's a disinfection station, which is used to disinfect the items from the infected households. It was in the Cane Lane, just below our museum. And if you join our heritage trail, the TPS Heritage Trail, this is one of the stations. And it was under his sort of charge. Now, the second group of or activity will be related to epidemiology. So all these birth and death, in particular, ascertaining the cause of death of this dumped body in the streets. A lot of people dumped dead bodies in those days. They just, if you have an infectious disease, I want to dump you because otherwise my house will become infected and people will come to my house and close down and fumigation, etc. It will be inconvenient. Therefore, body dumping was quite prevalent in those days. And he had the task of determining the dump body. What was exactly the cause of death? Was it infectious? Now, the third role will be about regulatory role, basically. Okay, you can see the items there. Control offensive trace. And he actually did not need to do it himself. He had sanitary inspectors under him. So, but it's under his charge. Okay, so you can have an idea. Basically, the most important thing from the medical point of view is to control the notifiable infectious diseases. And the most important one is the bubonic plague at that time. You see the number there. And also because bubonic plague recurred in Hong Kong for about 30 years after the first attack in 1894. So this is one of the main things. Of course, the other thing would be like control smallpox, diphtheria, etc. So these are the sort of bread and butter for him. So in summary, the MHS will need to ensure clean water, proper sewage, hygienic condition of the house so that infectious disease would be controlled. So that's the role of the first MOH. Well, in fact, because there are so few people in the medical hierarchy, he was basically the equivalent of today's director of health, with some senator inspectors under him only. Actually, he had an assistant later on, okay, also a doctor. Okay, so was he successful as a medical officer of health? Maybe. I think he's probably successful because he was elevated and became a executive councillor in 1905. So it's quite important within the government if you are a member of the executive council. And on his death in 1940, this is from South China Morning Post, it seems that the review was positive. The colony owed him a gratitude for controlling the epidemics. So this is his work as the MOH. I also like to point out two other things that he was notable for. Number one, he's a pioneer in malaria and malaria control. Now, malaria is prevalent in Hong Kong since 1842. It's called the Hong Kong fever. A lot of people die because of this so-called Hong Kong fever, which was actually malaria. And in the 20s, Sir Ronald Ross, who won the Nobel Prize because he discovered the mosquito as a vector for malaria transmission in 1902, okay? He praised Francis Clark as one of the three British pioneers in the modern method of control of malaria. So that was quite an honor. This article in the BMJ was an address by him in 1907, recounting the story of malaria control in his days. So the Anopheles mosquito was only identified, not discovered, identified in Hong Kong in 1900, okay, not so early. And because of this identification, not by Francis Scott, by another doctor, J.C. Thompson, they started to do prevention based on this mosquito theory by draining the nullars, filling of the pools and subsoil drainage. So this is based on Ross theory about the mosquito transmission, and had some initial success. This is a picture sent by Francis Clark to Sir Ross. On this side, it's shown the untrained nullar. This is the breeding pool for the mosquitoes. You can see all these pool of water, okay? That one is after training, so it's like straight and cemented, and therefore it's easier to kill the larvae of the mosquito. So remember, the discovery of mosquito as a vector was only in 1897. So Francis Scott began 1900, just a few years after the discovery of the mosquito as a vector. Therefore, he was called the pioneer. So this is one of the things notable about him. The other is about beriberi. Beriberi is a disease that I do not know because I haven't seen any case. Professor Yang may see some cases. Now, this is also his pet topic. Now, in 1900, he wrote an article. He actually addressed the BMA Hong Kong branch on this topic. He described an outbreak in the Berlin Foundling House. Okay, it's called an outbreak because in those days it was still thought that beriberi was an infectious disease. The only thing is we haven't still be able to identify the microbe. Okay, so therefore it was called an outbreak. But sometime later, in 1908, when the Far Eastern Association of Tropical Medicine was formed in Manila, Francis Scott was elected as the first secretary and treasurer. So he has some standing within the tropical medicine sphere. And in the first general meeting of the association in 1910 in Manila, he actually proposed this resolution. Basically, the association, or he, support that the white polished rice is the cause of this problem, beriberi, and desire that this should be taken note of by the government concerned, not just Hong Kong, but all government within the Far East. Now, this is early because it was still controversial. The discovery of thiamine was in 1926. It was isolated in 1926 only. But the theory of nutrition-related beriberi was earlier, like 1606, by a British called Hopkins and other people. So there was a lot of controversy about this theory of nutrition causing this beriberi. So he was again a pioneer in the field. He advocated this already in 1910. He actually sent circulars to employers or coolies in Hong Kong, advising them that they should vary their diet. If they are poor, they cannot have fish or meat. They can use bean. Bean was much cheaper in those days. So he walked his talk. So these are the things that make him a very remarkable MOH, medical officer health. He is also the first dean of our faculty. This is an article by Professor Lindsay Wright in the 30s. Actually, when Francis Clark arrived in Hong Kong in 1895, the next year he already became a lecturer in the college. And in 1897, that is 2 years later, he became the third dean of the college. The second dean was James Canline. The first is Patrick Manson. And he's the longest serving dean because from 1897 till he left Hong Kong in 1915, he was the dean of the college and also the dean of the medical faculty. So he spent a lot of time in the business of the college and the faculty. And therefore, Lindsay Wright paid him great compliment and coupled his name with Ho Kai. So he's very dedicated. And I'm showing this picture again because I want to show you that his students were grateful to him. This is a unique reunion picture of him with his former students. You can see this is Li Shufan. Okay, this one. This is Ma Lu. This is Guan Genglau, okay, and other doctors from the Hong Kong CM, College of Medicine. So he was fairly loved by the students. What did he do for the students? Number one, as MOH, he advocated the government should employ these people. By the way, when Dr. Sun Yat-sen graduated from Hong Kong CM, 1892, he was not qualified to practice medicine in Hong Kong because the GMC would not recognize the HKCM certificate or diploma. So that's why they are in a very difficult position, okay? Francis advocate for the government to employ these people to help to identify the cause of death of these dumb bodies. And then later on, when we have this Chinese public dispensary, okay, 公立診所, government actually pay some of these people as assistants, sort of not full doctors, but assistants in the job. And also in 1908, a law was passed, not a law, it's in the Gazette that HKCM graduates can also issue death certificate. Now, this is also a very important step for the status of these HKCM doctors. So that's why he's fairly loved by the students. Hong Kong U, in 1912, he became the Dean of Hong Kong U Medical Faculty. And during that time, he helped raise funds for the Sports Pavilion as the treasurer. And he was also the warden of the Lugat Hall. When he left in 1915, this hallmate, Lim Chong-eng, presented him with a souvenir. Lim Chong-eng graduated in 1916. He became professor in PUMC, Peking Union Medical College, and he was dubbed as the founding father of microbiology in China, a very important figure in the Chinese medicine, Lam Zhongyang. I now move to the female medical students. Now, before I talk about this life story of Eva Hodong and Lai Bochun, I would like to introduce this Dr. Seabury, or Alice Hickling. She was the first female doctor in Hong Kong. He came to Hong Kong in 1904 as a missionary doctor of the London Missionary Society, and he was in charge, and she was in charge of the Alice Memorial Maternity Hospital. The letter so serious, okay. And she was responsible for introduction of the training of midwives in the modern Western style in Hong Kong since she arrived. She later left LMS and joined the government. In 1922, when the Chinese elite built and opened this hospital, Zhangye Hospital, of course, everyone knows, she was invited to be the supervisor of the hospital. And therefore, she was one of the sort of founder, maybe, of the Zhangye, of the obstetric and midwife service in Hong Kong. Strange. Okay, let me talk about female medical students. Now, this picture shows Rachel Irving, the first female graduates of Hong Kong U. He actually pry open the door for female students to be admitted in 1921. How can she do that? She was the daughter of the Director of Education, Edward Irving. And Irving sought advice, legal advice from the AG. And the AG told the Senate, there's no legal, there's a university ordinance. There's nothing in the ordinance that said female students could not be admitted. And therefore the Senate agreed, okay, I will admit female students. And that's why Irving was the first. Actually, she was not the only one. Now, in this picture, you can see sitting in the middle is Irene Hodong, the first Chinese female graduate. She was admitted to Hong Kong U at the same time as Irving in 1921, okay? Autumn term. Next, sitting on the right of Irene Hodong is Lai Bochun, also admitted at the same time. This is our first female medical student, 1921, September. Hodong, Eva Hodong over there was the sister of Irene Hodong. She was admitted 1922 in the spring term, so a bit later. Why? Because she was in China at that time, traveling with the family. Therefore, she could not join. But for practical purpose, Lai and Eva, they're classmates. Okay. Of course, Eva Hodong came from a very prominent family. She graduated from DGS. I want to highlight one thing. She matriculated 1918, and she was admitted 1922. That means what? She was idling at home because she could be admitted 1918 if the university agreed to open the door. But at that time, the door was closed to all female students. Therefore, she was idling at home. But she was a brilliant student. Look at the score. The biology is 82, organic chemistry is like 84, and she won the prize for anatomy physiology. Just in today's term, 學霸, definitely. Very bright. This is how she looked like in Western costume, because later on she changed to Changshan. This is when she was a student. And in 1927, she became the first female graduate of the faculty. She passed the exam in one attempt, so that's very bright student. And then she moved to the UK to continue her study. Now this is because the family is rich, obviously. Otherwise, you cannot do that. Okay, so en route to London, you see this picture of her on the, this is Egypt, obviously. Okay, I want to show, the arrow showed Eva Hodong, and Irene Hodong was behind. And the man there is very important too. He's the first director, medical director, first Chinese medical director in Hong Kong, KCO, Yang Guozhang. At that time, he was the boyfriend of Eva Hodong. Therefore, they traveled together. Okay, that's how the story goes. Okay, very quickly introduces, we see report of Eva Hodong obtaining diploma in tropical medicine, and then the diploma of gynae and obstetrics in Rotunda, and then she was the first Hong Kong U grad to get to obtain this MRCP Ireland in 1929, and then she went to Vienna to further her study in ONG, and then come back to UK. Now I do not know exactly when she came back to Hong Kong, but I guess probably in 1934, because this picture was taken in 1935, showing her, sitting next to Professor Tottenham on his farewell party. Tottenham was the professor, ONG professor. So she was there. So that means she's probably back in 1934. 1934, yes. So she's been away for quite some time. She was away in 1927, and for about 7 years, she was abroad studying ONG and so on. And then we know from the credentials again, she joined the UGU under Professor Nixon. This is a picture showing her in 1937, more mature. Okay, this one with the dog, Missy. And also in the picture, the red circle is Dr. KCO, her brother-in-law. He married her sister, Florence, okay? So that's why they are in the same picture. And then in 1937, from Professor Colin King's report, she became the first assistant to the professor. So he was promoted as first assistant to the professor in 1937. But she resigned in 1938. So only one plus years. So why? She was moving up nicely, a very good career in UGU. Why should she resign? And that's the reason. She is a patriot. Remember in 1937, China and Japan is in war, okay? And this is Madame Song Hengling, okay, came into Hong Kong to establish this China Defense League in 1938. And Eva Hodong, being a very patriotic person, joined this. And then she later decided that she wanted to go back to China to help their war effort. And she joined the Red Cross, the Chinese Red Cross Medical Relief Corps. This is really, really very tough. I think there are some medical students and doctors in Hong Kong joining the Red Cross, like Ho Hongqiu, okay? But men is different from women. You see, it's much more difficult for a female doctor to be in the war zone. It is quite a courageous and patriotic act. So this is a newspaper telling us that she's in Chongqing in 1939. Actually, she traveled quite a lot. She was in Guiyang and then in Kunming and other places because it is war. So when the Japanese advance, you have to sort of retreat and so on. So she's been to a lot of places during the war years. And then she came back to Hong Kong 1941 because of this birthday party of Sir Robert Hodong. So it's somewhere there. Okay, yeah, over there. So this is Eva Hodong coming back in Hong Kong in December the 2nd to join this party for the birthday. And Japanese attacked Hong Kong the 8th of December. She was trapped in Hong Kong. And she volunteered for the University Relief Hospital, which was run by Professor Gordon King in Lok Yau Tong. So she became a doctor in the Lok Yau Tong University Relief Hospital for a while. And then she came back to, and then she went back to mainland China, to Free China, to continue his war effort. And she came back to Hong Kong 1946 and opened a private practice in Central, okay? Of course, doing ONG practice. Probably in 1961, she retired, maybe due to poor health, according to some source, and retired to New York. This is at the older stage. She died in New York at the age of 90, so quite ripe old age. Sorry, have to go faster. Lai Bo-chun came from a different background, a more humble family background. She graduated from Italian convent, which is today Sacred Heart. And then father is a government storekeeper, so not as prominent. And as a student, she's not as good as Eva Hodong. You see, the organic chem is 50 and the biology is 47 only. So Eva Hodong is in the 80s. And that's why she graduated 1 year later, okay? So that's the reason, not as good as a student. So this is the graduation photo. You see Lai Bo-chun sitting there beside Dr. Sammy, the ONG doctor who get an MD. So the first job she got was in the university as a clinical assistant to the outpatient department. And then she joined the government, 1st of June, 1928, as assistant medical officer to Dr. Hickling. Remember, this is Hickling of the Jaan Yuk Hospital. So this is 1928 in Jaan Yuk Hospital. This is Lai Bo-chun. This is probably Dr. Hickling. And sitting in the middle is Professor Tottenham. Okay, this is a group picture for the Jaan Yuk group. Okay, I'd like to say a few things about her career in the government. Now, she stayed in the government for about 20 years. So, as the first female doctors in the government service, what is she facing? Is there any sort of discrimination for female doctors at that time? She joined 1928. And the salary is only 1,800 annual salary, much lower than the male counterpart. I don't know the exact reason why. I'm trying to find out, but there's no answer to that. And then half a year later, it became the normal. Okay, 4,000 is the normal sort of for male and female. And then she progressed. So in the first few years, up to about 1933, she was working in Jaan Yuk Hospital. Jaan Yuk Hospital, remember, is a Chinese hospital. But in 1934, it became a government hospital. And she left. And she still, I think, probably worked in the outpatient department during that time from 34 to 39. In 39, we know that she had some, not promotion exactly, because she's still, the rank is still the same. But she became the supervisor of midwives and secretary of the midwives board. So she sort of rose in eminence. And then it was the war, okay? So before the war, the highest thing she can achieve is the supervisor of midwives and secretary of the midwife board. So this is an achievement too. After the war, 1945, she resumed duty and became the MOIC of Wan Chai Health Center. Basically, this is the MCH, okay? And she got the real promotion in 1946, lady medical officer. Now look, she started off as a Chinese lady medical officer and ended up as a lady medical officer. So what's the difference between these two? Because before the war, the Chinese rank is lower and pay less than the European rank. So before the war, if you are Chinese, you cannot become a lady medical officer. That's reserved for the European, okay? After the war, policy changed, and therefore she was promoted to lady medical officer. It was in the newspaper, actually, and she got higher pay. So to answer the first question, yes, there's definite racial discrimination in those days, Chinese versus non-Chinese. Gender discrimination is difficult to tell because salary-wise, pre-war, male and female seems to be the same, but not after the war. That's the problem. Okay. Okay, so she got an OBE for the war contribution. So actually 3 doctors, Dr. Thomas, Dr. Lai Bochun, and Dr. Hua Zheyan. So what did she do during the war? First, as St. John Ambulance Brigade surgeon, she was manning this Victoria Hospital in the peak during the Hong Kong battle, and the hospital got a direct hit from the bombardment, okay? And she was very brave and lead the team. That's one of the things she got praised. And after the capitulation of Hong Kong, she worked under Selwyn Clark, the medical director. And she tried to help the widows and the orphans of these internees and try to smuggle food and medicine into the camps, in the prison POW camps and so on. Now remember, Selwyn Clark was tortured by the Japanese because of these so-called secretive activities. She could be incriminated as well, but luckily I think she was not caught. The other doctors like Hua Zheyan was caught by the Japanese and so on. So that's why she got the OBE for the war contribution. And she did also some anti-TB work during the occupation by the Japanese. She left government 1949 to private practice. This is the address in the Dundee, Boundary Street. Now there is, I don't know exactly what happened, but it was in the newspaper that in 1947, the Salary Commission, the Government Salary Commission, stipulated that female officers, okay, earns about 80% of male officers. This is official, okay? And at that time, many female civil servants, including doctors, protest and sort of write to the London Parliament and so on. And many people resigned because of this. I'm not sure whether Lai Bochun resigned because of this unfair treatment to the female civil servants. But anyway, she left in 1949. I do not have any information about the private practice and something afterwards. One source said she lived to 100 years old, older than Eva Hodong. So finally, that's my final slide. I'm trying to tell the story about these pioneer women doctors. I try to think about whether they will be discriminated against in those days. Racial discrimination is obviously there, we're quite sure. But what about between the gender? I'm not quite sure because we do not have enough evidence now, but probably there will be career choice limitation for them. So all the early female doctors gravitate towards ONG and child health, most of them in the early days. I think this is a limitation of the career choice. Even in my days, I have not seen any orthopedic surgeon, female orthopedic surgeons. Now there, of course, you have so many quite more different. Personal sacrifice. Eva Hodong and Lai Bochun did not marry, no children. So I don't know why. I do not know why, but it was the fact. Whether it's because of the career that they are doing, therefore they decide not to marry and so on. Alice Hickling married, but she had no child. Okay, so it's quite interesting if we want to explore further, but of course I don't have the time. Finally, advertisement. After this book, I co-author with Professor Maura Chen of this book on New Family. And after that, Maura published this, I think, just early this year, later than the book, about Professor Mo Ziyang. If you have not read it, I recommend it. Thank you very much for your attention.